On Murder, Considered as One of the Fine Arts. Part 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by M.L. Cohen, Cleveland, Ohio, June 2007. Miscellaneous Essays by Thomas De Quincey. Section 2. On Murder, Considered as One of the Fine Arts. Part 1. To the Editors of Blackwood's Magazine. Sir, we have all heard of a Society for the Promotion of Vice, of the Hellfire Club, etc. At Brighton, I think it was, that a society was formed for the suppression of virtue. That society was itself suppressed, but I am sorry to say that another exists in London, of a character still more atrocious. In tendency, it may be denominated a society for the encouragement of murder, but according to their own delicate Greek euphemismos, it is styled the Society of Connoisseurs in Murder. They profess to be curious in homicide, amateurs and dilettanti in the various modes of bloodshed, and, in short, murder fanciers. Every fresh atrocity of that class, which the police annals of Europe bring up, they meet and criticize as they would a picture, statue, or other work of art. But I need not trouble myself with any attempt to describe the spirit of the proceedings, as you will collect that much better from one of the monthly lectures read before the Society last year. This has fallen into my hands accidentally, in spite of all the vigilance exercised to keep their transactions from the public eye. The publication of it will alarm them, and my purpose is that it should. For I would much rather put them down quietly, by an appeal to public opinion through you, than by such an exposure of names as would follow an appeal to Bow Street, which last appeal, however, if this should fail, I must positively resort to. For it is scandalous that such things should go on in a Christian land. Even in a heathen land, the toleration of murder was felt by a Christian writer to be the most crying reproach of the public morals. This writer was Lactantius, and with his words, as singularly applicable to the present occasion, I shall conclude. Quote, Quid tam horribile, says he, tam tetram quam homus truncatato, ideo severissimus legibilis vita nostra muniter, ideo bella excribili sunt. Invanit tamo consuedo quod natus homicidium sine bello ac sine legibit faciat, et hoc sibi voluptuus quod sit vindicavit, quod si interesse homicidio sceleris conscia est, et adam fascinare spectator obstricatus, et qui admissor, ergo in is gladiatorium caedabilis non meteor club profunditor quid spectat, com il quid facit, nec posse illa munis sanguine cilvecit effunde, at videri non interfessis, qui interfectore et favet, e proemium post lavit. Quote, Human life, says he, quote, is guarded by laws of the utmost rigor, yet custom has divided a mode of evading them in behalf of murder, and the demands of taste, voluptas, are now becoming the same as those of abandoned guilt. Let the Society of Gentlemen Amateurs consider this, and let me call their especial attention to the last sentence, which is so weighty that I shall attempt to convey it in English. Quote, Now, if merely to be present at a murder fastens on a man the character of an accomplice, if barely to be a spectator involves us in one common guilt with the perpetrator, it follows of necessity that, in these murders of the amphitheatre, the hand which inflicts the fatal blow is not more deeply imbrued in blood than he who sits and looks on, neither can he be clear of blood who has countenanced its shedding, nor that man seem other than a participator in murder who gives his applause to the murderer and calls for prizes in his behalf. The premia post levit, I have not yet heard charged upon the gentlemen amateurs of London, though undoubtedly the proceedings tend to that, but the infittatore favil, is implied in the very title of this association, and expressed in every line of the lecture which I sent you. I am, etc., X, Y, Z. Lecture. Gentlemen, I have had the honor to be appointed by your committee to the trying task of reading the Williams Lecture on Murder, considered as one of the fine arts, a task which might be easy enough 3 or 4 centuries ago, when the art was little understood, and few great models had been exhibited. But in this age, when masterpieces of excellence have been executed by professional men, it must be evident that in the style of criticism applied to them, the public will look for something of a corresponding improvement. Practice and theory must advance pari passu. People begin to see that something more goes to the composition of a fine murder than 2 blockheads to kill and be killed, a knife, a purse, and a dark lane. Design, gentlemen, grouping, light and shade, poetry, sentiment, are now deemed indispensable attempts of this nature. Mr. Williams has exalted the idea of murder to us all, and to me, therefore, in particular, has deepened the arduousness of my task. Like Aeschylus or Milton in poetry, like Michelangelo in painting, he has carried his art to a point of colossal sublimity, and, as Mr. Wordsworth observes, has in a manner "created the taste by which he is to be enjoyed." To sketch the history of the art, and to examine its principles critically, now remains as a duty for the connoisseur, and for judges of quite another stamp from His Majesty's judges of Assisi. Before I begin, let me say a word or two to certain prigs who affect to speak of our society as if it were in some degree immoral in its tendency. Immoral. God bless my soul, gentlemen, what is it that people mean? I am for morality, and always shall be, and for virtue and all that, and I do affirm and always shall, let what will come of it, that murder is an improper line of conduct, highly improper, and I do not stick to assert that any man who deals in murder must have very incorrect ways of thinking, and truly inaccurate principles. And so far from aiding and abetting him by pointing out his victim's hiding place, as a great moralist of Germany declared it to be every good man's duty to do, I would subscribe 1s. 6d. to have him apprehended, which is more by 18d. than the most eminent moralists have subscribed for that purpose. Kant, who carried his demands of unconditional veracity to so extravagant a length as to affirm that if a man were to see an innocent person escape from a murderer, it would be his duty, on being questioned by the murderer, to tell the truth and to point out the retreat of the innocent person, under any certainty of causing murder. Lest this doctrine should be supposed to have escaped him in any heat of dispute, on being taxed with it by a celebrated French writer, he solemnly reaffirmed it with his reasons. But what then? Everything in this world has 2 handles. Murder, for instance, may be laid hold of by its moral handle, as it generally is in the pulpit and at the Old Bailey, and that, I confess, is its weak side. Or it may also be treated aesthetically, as the Germans call it, that is, in relation to good taste. To illustrate this, I will urge the authority of 3 eminent persons, that is, S.T. Coleridge, Aristotle, and Mr. Howship the surgeon. To begin with S.T.C. One night, many years ago, I was drinking tea with him in Berners Street, which, by the way, for a short street, has been uncommonly fruitful in men of genius. Others were there beside myself, and amidst some carnal considerations of tea and toast, we were all imbibing a dissertation on Platonius from the attic lips of S.T.C. Suddenly a cry arose of "Fire! Fire!" upon which all of us, master and disciples, Plato and hoi periton Platona, rushed out eager for the spectacle. The fire was in Oxford Street, at a pianoforte maker's, and, as it promised to be a conflagration of merit, I was sorry that my engagements forced me away from Mr. Coleridge's party before matters were come to a crisis. Some days after, meeting with my Platonic host, I reminded him of the case and begged to know how that very promising exhibition had terminated. "Oh, sir," said he, "it turned out so ill that we damned it unanimously." Now does any man suppose that Mr. Coleridge, who for all he is too fat to be a person of active virtue, is undoubtedly a worthy Christian, that this good S.T.C., I say, was an incendiary, or capable of wishing any ill to the poor man and his pianofortes, many of them doubtless with the additional keys? On the contrary, I know him to be that sort of man that I durst stake my life upon it that he would have worked an engine in a case of necessity